We're here in the majestic wilderness that is the area of En Gedi, high up on the rocky mountains, the crags that the Old Testament speaks so eloquently of, the area where David escaped from Saul, the king who sought his life. After the events that happened in the cave where David spared the life of Saul, David went down from these mountains, from these rocky crags where he had been living, and went to the area below. Below was a wealthy landowner by the name of Nabal. This is found in 1 Samuel chapter 25. Now, Nabal in Hebrew means fool, and this is exactly the way the Old Testament account portrays Nabal. Now David went down with his men. By that time he had 600 men with him, outlaws all, and they went down to the wealthy landowner Nabal, and they surrounded his property. They protected his sheep and his land and his servants from all the other outlaws in the area, all the other marauding tribes, the Philistines, etc. And at the end of a certain period of time that David protected Nabal and his property, he went to Nabal and said, "Please, give me and my men provisions enough so that we may live in peace and in contentment for a while for the service that we have done for you in protecting you." Nabal sent word to David and his men saying, "Who is David, son of Jesse? There are many slaves running away from their masters these days, aren't they? Who are you to me, and why should I give you of my plenty?" And when David heard this, he got angry. He got upset, and he called his men together, and he said, "May I be cursed if I don't slaughter Nabal and all his people with him this day for the injustice that he has done against me." As David was on his way to attack Nabal and his people, Nabal's wife, Nabal the Fool, had a wife, Abigail, and she ran out to meet David along the way. She ran out with provisions and food and drink, enough to last many, many, many weeks. She got off her animal. She bowed down low to David, and she said, "Please, son of Jesse, stay your hand. Do not do the evil that you contemplate this day against my husband. He is a Nabal. He is a fool. It's just what his name is, and he knows not what he's doing." David heard what Abigail had said, and he realized that she was right. He stayed his hand and that of the hands of his 600 outlaws that day. Now Nabal had a party that week, and he got very drunk and very merry. And when Abigail came to the party and told him what she had done, he became very upset. And the Bible says he became like a stone and fell down. 10 days later, he had died. What this passage illustrates is that no one can defraud or defame the Lord's anointed without the hand of God, Adonai, coming down and smiting. Now, I can imagine being up here as David had returned with his men to the strongholds that are En Gedi, that he sat up here contemplating what God had done in his life up to that point. Perhaps he sat up here in this very spot, composed a psalm to the great God of Israel. Let's see how the concept of the Lord's anointed and striking out against the Lord's anointed is illustrated further in the account of David's life. Now, after the events of Nabal and David came back to the wilderness area, he learned once again that Saul, would come out to kill him. And Saul camped in the area where David and his men were hiding. But Saul did not yet learn the location of David. So one evening, while Saul and his men were camped out and asleep, and David said, "Which of you will come down with me to Saul's camp?" And so his nephew, Abishai, said, "I will," and the two of them snuck down to the camp where Saul and his men were sleeping. And David and Abishai stood over Saul as he slept helpless. And Abishai said, "Look, here's Saul's spear. Look, David, all I need to do is just take the spear, and one shot, Saul is dead. Boom! I don't need to strike him twice." But David once again, just as he had said in the cave where he had cut off the corner of Saul's robe, he said, "Abishai, stay your hand, far be it from us to harm the Lord's anointed. But so that he knows that we once again, for the second time, had the opportunity to smite him, let's take his spear. And furthermore, let's take his water jug." And that's what they did. They took his spear, his water jug, and they snuck out of the camp, and they went back up into these mountains. Now the next day, David went over to the far side of the hill and looked down upon Saul and his men. And he left a great space so that Saul had no opportunity to have his men throw spears or shoot arrows at him. But he cried out to the people, "Where is the king's spear, by the way? And where is his water jug?" And Saul looked, and they saw that the spear and the water jug were missing, and that David had once again had the opportunity to come and kill Saul. And so Saul looked up and he cried out, "Art thou David, my son?" David, of course, was Saul's son-in-law. He was indeed his son. David answered, "It is my voice, O king." And he said, "Wherefore does my Lord pursue his servant? For what have I done? Judge for yourself whether the path that you choose and the course that you pursue is the righteous one in the eyes of the Lord." And then Saul answered David and said, "I have indeed sinned. Return, my son David, for I will do thee no more harm, because my soul was precious in your sight last night. I have played the fool. I, Saul, have played the Nabal and have made a large mistake." And David answered, "Here's your spear. Send someone to fetch it. May the Lord render to every man his righteousness and his faithfulness. For the Lord delivered thee into my hand this day. But I would not stretch forth my hand against the Lord's anointed." Then Saul said to David, "May you be blessed, my son. You will do great things, and you will still prevail." Saul admitted to David that day that he would one day sit on Saul's throne. It would not be Saul's blood children that would inherit the kingly line, but it was David, his son-in-law, who would inherit the mantle of the Mashiach, of the Lord's anointed.